They called us the cute little mammals from the Outer Rim, the Galactic Council's entertainment for centuries. Our first contact was met with barely contained laughter when we proudly presented our greatest warships, crude metal boxes propelled by controlled explosions, armed with kinetic projectiles that couldn't even breach their basic shields. The Zephyrians giggled behind their crystalline manipulators. The mighty Krex Empire dismissed us as adorable primitives playing war. Even the pacifist Luminari couldn't hide their amusement at our charmingly simple military demonstrations. For 50 years, humanity served as the galaxy's comic relief. We were the species that thought nuclear weapons were impressive. The civilization that celebrated reaching light speed when others had been traveling through dimensional folds for millennia. The funny little bipeds who got excited about conquering a single star system while empires spanned thousands. But the galaxy forgot one crucial detail about evolution. The most dangerous predators are often the ones that appear harmless. And humanity had been very, very careful about what we showed them. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of the UES Harmony, watching the magnificent spires of Galactic Council Station grow larger against the starfield. After 50 years of membership, humanity's diplomatic vessel still looked like a rust bucket compared to the graceful curves and impossible geometries of alien ships docked around the station. That was intentional. "Ma'am, we're receiving docking instructions from traffic control," reported Lieutenant Shun from the communication station. His voice carried the same carefully practiced tone of mild incompetence that all human crew members had perfected over the decades. "Acknowledged, Lieutenant. Try not to bump into anything expensive this time," Elena replied with a theatrical sigh that she knew would be picked up by the alien monitoring systems. The bridge crew exchanged subtle glances. Each of them was a graduate of Earth's most advanced military academies, handpicked for their acting ability as much as their tactical expertise. The worn uniforms, the occasionally flickering displays, the seemingly jury-rigged equipment, all of it was theater for the galaxy's amusement. As the Harmony limped toward its assigned docking bay, Elena's mind drifted to the real reason for today's emergency session. 3 days ago, the Devourer fleet had emerged from dark space at the galaxy's edge. The ancient enemy that had driven countless civilizations to extinction over millions of years had returned, and the Galactic Council was panicking. The docking procedure took longer than necessary, with Elena making sure to scrape the hull against the guidance rails just enough to draw amused chirps from the Zephyrian traffic controllers. "Sorry about that," she transmitted. "These human reflexes aren't quite up to alien standards." Ambassador Marcus Webb was waiting for her in the diplomatic lounge, nursing what appeared to be coffee, but was actually a carefully crafted synthetic beverage designed to make humans appear dependent on primitive stimulants. Webb was perhaps the greatest actor in human history, having spent 30 years convincing the galaxy that humanity was charmingly simple-minded. "Elena, good timing," Webb said, deliberately mispronouncing her name as the aliens had taught him. "The council session is about to begin. Have you reviewed the briefing materials?" "Yes, sir." Standard bumbling human routine with a side of earnest helpfulness. "Exactly. Though given the circumstances, we might need to dial up the earnestness." They made their way through the station's corridors, past towering Krex warriors whose scales rippled with bioluminescent patterns of barely contained disdain, delicate luminari whose energy forms pulsed with what Elena had learned to recognize as condescending amusement, and the crystalline Zephyrians who chimed musical notes of gentle mockery as the humans passed. The council chamber was a marvel of alien engineering, a vast sphere where representatives from thousands of species could attend in person or via quantum projection. The Devourer crisis had drawn an unprecedented crowd. Elena and Webb took their seats in the primitive species section, an area deliberately designed with basic chairs and simple displays to accommodate the less advanced races. Chancellor Nexus of the Krex Empire called the session to order, his massive form dominating the central platform. "Fellow beings of the Galactic Council," his voice rumbled through translation systems, "we face the return of our ancient enemy. The Devourer fleet has been detected moving through the Andromeda spiral, consuming everything in its path. Holographic displays materialized, showing the terrifying sight of organic ships the size of small moons, their surfaces writhing with what appeared to be living weapons. Elena watched with practiced, wide-eyed horror while mentally cataloging every detail. Humanity had been tracking the Devourer's approach for 5 years. High Luminary Etherias of the Luminari spoke next, her energy form flickering with distress patterns. Our preliminary scans suggest their technology has evolved since the last incursion. Their bioweapons appear more sophisticated, their defensive capabilities enhanced. Elena raised her hand tentatively, the gesture drawing subtle attention from nearby species. Chancellor Nexus noticed her after several seconds, as if just remembering humans were present. Ah yes, the humans. You have something to contribute to this discussion. Elena stood awkwardly, dropping her datapad in the process. Yes, sir. Your Chancellorness. We were wondering if maybe we could help. We know we're not very advanced or anything, but humans are pretty good at fighting. We've had lots of practice. The chamber filled with the alien equivalent of polite laughter. A few species exchanged those knowing looks that said, "How adorable, the pets want to play war." "That is very noble of you," Chancellor Nexus replied with what he clearly thought was kindness. "However, this enemy has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Perhaps humanity could assist with evacuation efforts, moving refugees to safe systems." Ambassador Webb leaned forward eagerly. "Oh yes, we'd love to help with that. Though, would it be possible to get some technical specifications on these Devourer ships? For the evacuation planning, you understand. We want to know how fast we need to run." More gentle laughter rippled through the chamber. High Luminary Etherias pulsed with what Elena recognized as maternal fondness. "Of course, dear humans. We'll provide you with basic tactical information. Nothing too complex, naturally." Crystal Singer Harmony of the Zephyrians added her musical voice to the discussion. "The humans' eagerness to serve is truly touching. Perhaps they could also assist with supply distribution to refugee camps." Elena nodded enthusiastically while Webb took careful notes on his primitive paper pad. Around them, the real powers of the galaxy began discussing serious military strategy. The Krex would deploy their dreadnought fleets. The Luminari would coordinate their reality-bending weapons. The Zephyrians would provide their dimensional fortress platforms. "What about the Nexar Collective?" someone asked. "Their probability manipulation weapons were effective against the Devourers in the last war." "The Nexar went extinct 700 years ago," Chancellor Nexus rumbled sadly, along with most of the other species who possessed truly advanced military technology. "We are less prepared than our predecessors." Elena exchanged a microscopic glance with Webb. The Nexar Collective hadn't gone extinct. They'd been relocated to a carefully hidden system where they'd spent centuries helping humanity develop weapons the galaxy had never imagined. But that was information for another time. The session continued for hours, with species after species volunteering their forces while carefully maintaining the illusion that this would be enough. Elena listened with growing amusement as they discussed battle plans that would have been considered obsolete by human military standards 50 years ago. Finally, Chancellor Nexus called for adjournment. "We will reconvene in 3 standard cycles to finalize our defensive strategy. In the meantime, all species are encouraged to begin mobilization procedures." As the crowd began to disperse, High Luminary Etherias approached the human delegation. "You humans are so wonderfully optimistic," she said, her energy form pulsing with affection. "Your offered help is truly heartwarming, even if it isn't practical." "We just want to do our part," Elena replied with practiced innocence. "Maybe we could at least watch the battles to learn how real military operations work. Perhaps you could observe from a safe distance," Etherias agreed. "It will be educational for your species." Webb gathered his papers with deliberate clumsiness, dropping several sheets. "We'll start preparing our ships for refugee transport immediately." How many refugees should we expect?" "Difficult to say," the luminary replied sadly. In the last Devourer incursion, only about 30% of the galaxy's population survived. Elena's eyes went wide with apparently genuine shock. 30%? But there must be something more we can do. Some way to fight back better. Crystal Singer Harmony chimed what sounded like gentle music, but translated as patronizing comfort. Sweet little humans, some battles are beyond the reach of primitive weapons. Your kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives cannot harm beings who manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. I suppose you're right, Elena said with convincing dejection. We'll just have a hope the smart species can protect everyone. As they made their way back to the Harmony, Elena and Webb maintained their disappointed demeanor until they reached the privacy of Elena's quarters. Only then did Webb allow himself a slight smile. They bought it completely, he said, his voice now carrying the crisp authority of a trained intelligence operative. Full technical specifications on Devourer technology, complete battle plans, and they're actually asking us to position our ships for refugee observation. Elena activated the room's quantum encryption field and pulled up her real communication systems. Admiral Chun, this is Vasquez. Mission accomplished. The Council has provided us with complete intelligence on enemy capabilities and is requesting we position our refugee ships at optimal strategic locations. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the secure channel, his features sharp with military precision. Behind him, Elena could see the massive bulk of humanity's real flagship, the UES Nemesis, bristling with weapons technology that would have given the entire Galactic Council nightmares. Excellent work, Captain. How long do we have? The Devourers will reach the outer systems in approximately 6 standard days. The Council plans to engage them at the Zirian Nebula. Perfect. That gives us time to position the Shadow Fleet. Chen's smile was predatory. 50 years of playing the harmless pets is about to pay off. Signal all ships. Operation Revelation is a go. Elena felt a thrill of anticipation. Hidden throughout human space, invisible to alien sensors, lay the true might of humanity's military. Ships that didn't rely on crude kinetic weapons or chemical explosives, but on technologies the galaxy believed impossible. Weapons that manipulated time, space, and the quantum foundations of reality itself. Admiral, Elena said, there's one more thing. The Luminari specifically mentioned that kinetic weapons can't harm reality manipulators. Chen's grin widened. They're about to learn that human kinetic weapons aren't quite what they seem. Prepare the quantum resonance cannons for deployment. As Elena ended the transmission, she looked back out at the Galactic Council station. Tomorrow, thousands of species would learn that the laughingstock of the galaxy had been carefully studying them, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for a war they never saw coming. The Devourers were about to face something they'd never encountered in millions of years of conquest. A species that had weaponized deception itself, turning their enemies' arrogance into their greatest vulnerability. And the galaxy was about to discover that when humans went to war, they didn't just fight to win. They fought to send a message. Deep in the Kuiper Belt of the Sol system, Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, watching her tactical displays update with information from across human space. What the galaxy saw as humanity's modest colonial expansion was actually the most sophisticated military network ever constructed. Every mining station was a fortress. Every trade route was a strategic corridor. Every research facility was a weapons development center that would have terrified civilizations 10,000 years older than humanity. Admiral, we're receiving final confirmations from all fleet groups, reported Commander Torres from the communication station. Unlike the theatrical incompetence displayed on diplomatic vessels, the Nemesis crew moved with the precision of a force that had been preparing for this moment for decades. Status report, all divisions, Chen commanded. Shadow Fleet actual reporting. All 100 dreadnoughts are in position and, maintaining stealth protocols, came the voice of Admiral Rees from humanity's primary battle fleet. The ships his force commanded were marvels of technology that officially didn't exist, vessels that could phase through dimensions, manipulate gravity as a weapon, and strike targets across galactic distances. Phantom Division ready, announced Admiral Kim from the Second Fleet. All stealth frigates are deployed throughout the target zone. The Devourers won't see us coming until it's too late. Technical Division, standing by, added Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins from the Research Command vessel hidden in the asteroid belt. All reality anchors are online, quantum dampening fields are ready for deployment, and the probability manipulation arrays are fully charged. Chen smiled grimly. The galaxy's primitive humans had spent 50 years reverse engineering technology from every species they'd encountered, then improving it beyond the original creator's wildest dreams. What the aliens didn't realize was that human brains were uniquely suited to understanding and manipulating technology in ways other species couldn't comprehend. Diplomatic Corps, report, Chen continued. Elena's voice came through from the council station. All positioned as requested by the alien fleets. Our refugee ships are exactly where we need them to be. The Council has provided complete tactical data on their battle plans. Outstanding. Commence Phase 1. Across human space, ships began to move. But these weren't the obvious, clunky vessels the galaxy expected. Advanced stealth technology, developed from Zephyrian dimensional manipulation and Luminary energy control, rendered the human fleet effectively invisible. To alien sensors, space appeared empty even as hundreds of the most advanced warships in galactic history glided silently toward their targets. On the planet Haven, in what the galaxy believed was humanity's largest refugee settlement, General Morrison watched his planetary defense grid come online. The simple colony worlds humanity had established were actually fortress planets, each one capable of withstanding attacks that would vaporize less prepared civilizations. All defense platforms are operational, reported his aide. The orbital ring cannons are charged and ready. What appeared to be agricultural satellites and communication relays around Haven's orbit were actually the most sophisticated weapons platforms ever conceived. Quantum tunneling cannons that could punch holes through space-time itself. Temporal displacement bombs that could age enemy ships into dust in seconds. Reality distortion fields that could trap entire fleets in pocket dimensions. Morrison's communication console chimed with an incoming transmission from Admiral Chun. General, you're about to have company. The Council evacuation fleets should be arriving within the hour. Remember, maintain the illusion until the shooting starts. Morrison nodded. Haven would soon host hundreds of alien civilian ships, all believing they were being protected by humanity's modest defensive capabilities. They had no idea they were sheltering behind technology that could defend against threats the galaxy couldn't imagine. Meanwhile, in the Zirian Nebula, the greatest military armada in known galactic history was assembling. Ships from 1,000 worlds converged on the nebula's edge, their combined firepower theoretically capable of sterilizing entire star systems. The Krex Empire had deployed their planetary siege ships. The Luminari brought their reality-warping dreadnoughts. The Zephyrians contributed their dimensional fortress platforms. Chancellor Nexus commanded the combined fleet from his massive flagship, the Dominion. Standing nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe, it represented the pinnacle of Krex engineering prowess. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of Allied fleets stretching across dozens of light years. Final count, Fleet Marshal. Nexus rumbled to his second-in-command. Approximately 50,000 warships of various classes, Chancellor. The largest defense force ever assembled. And our primitive allies. The humans have positioned their refugee transport vessels as requested, approximately 10 light hours from the primary battle zone. Far enough to be safe, close enough to witness the battle, and learn from our tactics. What the aliens didn't know was that those refugee transport vessels were actually advanced intelligence-gathering ships, equipped with sensors that could analyze alien technology in real time and identify weaknesses in their defensive systems. Every weapon fired, every shield activated, Every tactical maneuver would be recorded, analyzed, and transmitted to the human fleet. At that moment, space began to ripple at the edge of the Zirian Nebula. Reality itself seemed to twist and writhe as something impossibly vast forced its way through the barriers between dimensions. The Devourer fleet was arriving. The first ships to emerge defied easy description. They appeared organic, like vast creatures bred for war rather than constructed. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Weapons that seemed to be living appendages flexed and oriented toward the waiting galactic fleet. As more ships emerged, it became clear that the Devourers had grown stronger during their long absence. "Mother of Stars," whispered Fleet Marshal Gorix, his scaled hide rippling with involuntary fear patterns. "There are so many of them." The Devourer fleet numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Ships ranging from frigate-sized organisms to creatures large enough to devour planets. At their center emerged something that made even veteran space officers step back from their displays. A ship so vast it created its own gravitational effects, pulling debris and asteroids into orbit around its bulk. "That's their command vessel," Chancellor Nexus growled, though his voice carried undertones of uncertainty. "It's larger than anything in our historical records." High luminary Etherias, present as a quantum projection from her own flagship, pulsed with patterns of deep concern. "Chancellor, I'm detecting energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. Their biotechnology appears to have evolved beyond our previous encounters." From her observation post 10 light hours away, Elena watched the aliens panic with interest. The human analysis of the Devourer fleet painted a different picture. Yes, they were formidable. Yes, they had evolved. But they were still operating on predictable biological principles, and biology had rules that could be exploited. "Admiral Chun," she transmitted on a secure channel. "I'm reading the Devourer formation patterns. They're using the same basic hive mind coordination they did 6 million years ago, just with better ships." "Confirmed, Captain. Dr. Hawkins, are you seeing this?" Dr. Hawkins's voice came through from her research vessel. "Fascinating. They've improved their technology, but kept their fundamental behavioral patterns. Classic evolutionary conservatism. We can work with this." The alien fleet began to advance, weapons charging with energies that painted space in impossible colors. The Devourers responded by laughing. The sound came through space itself, transmitted on frequencies that bypassed normal communication protocols and spoke directly to the terror centers of alien brains. It was the sound of predators who had never met prey they couldn't consume. Chancellor Nexus steeled himself and opened fleet-wide communications. "All ships, this is your Chancellor. Today we fight not just for our civilizations, but for the right of intelligence to exist in this galaxy. Fire at will." The battle erupted with violence that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history. Krek's siege cannons hurled projectiles that could shatter moons. Luminary ships bent reality around themselves, creating weapons from pure energy and impossible mathematics. Zephyrian fortresses opened dimensional tiers that should have torn the Devourer ships apart. The results were devastating for the galactic fleet. The Devourers absorbed energy attacks, redirected kinetic projectiles, and seemed to grow stronger with each assault launched against them. Their return fire was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Weapons that turned matter into antimatter on contact, bioelectric fields that shut down mechanical systems through quantum interference, and, most terrifyingly, organisms that could learn and adapt to new threats in real time. "Chancellor," Fleet Marshal Gorix reported with barely controlled panic. "We're losing ships faster than we can count them. Their adaptation rate is off the charts." Elena watched the slaughter with professional detachment while maintaining her role as a horrified human observer. "Oh no," she transmitted to the alien fleet with perfect terror in her voice. "This is terrible. Isn't there anything we can do to help? Stay back, humans." Chancellor Nexus responded while his flagship shuddered under bioweapon impacts. "This is beyond your capabilities. Prepare for emergency evacuation." What the aliens couldn't see was that each ship they lost was providing valuable intelligence to the human fleet. Every Devourer adaptation was being analyzed in real time. Every weakness in alien defensive systems was being cataloged. Every tactical pattern was being fed into human battle computers that had been designed specifically to exploit the galaxy's blind spots. Admiral, Dr. Hawkins reported with growing excitement. I think I've found it. The Devourers are using biological quantum entanglement to coordinate their fleet actions. If we can disrupt their neural network frequencies. How long do you need? Chen asked. Give me 30 more minutes of data collection. The aliens are providing excellent test subjects. Elena almost felt sorry for the galactic fleet. They were fighting with honor, courage, and determination. They were also fighting with technology that was fundamentally limited by their species' evolutionary preconceptions. Humans had spent centuries learning to think outside those limitations. The tide of battle turned decisively against the galactic forces when the Devourer command ship opened what appeared to be its mouth. The creature vomited forth a stream of smaller organisms that engulfed entire squadrons of alien ships, dissolving them on a molecular level while incorporating their materials into new Devourer vessels. Fleet retreat, Chancellor Nexus commanded, his pride crumbling as he watched millennia of military development prove useless against an enemy that treated their greatest weapons as food. All ships fall back to the secondary defensive line. But there would be no secondary defensive line. The Devourers had adapted too quickly, learned too much. The galactic fleet was in full rout, with survivors fleeing in every direction while the enemy consumed their fallen vessels and grew stronger. Elena opened a communication channel to the fleeing alien ships. Don't worry, she called out with desperate cheerfulness. We humans will help evacuate everyone. Our ships can carry lots of refugees. As the broken remnants of the galactic fleet limped toward human positions, Elena prepared for the next phase of Operation Revelation. The galaxy was about to learn that their pet humans had been preparing for this moment for 50 years, and that humanity's definition of helping was about to become very interesting indeed. The refugee ships arrived at human positions in a state of complete chaos. Proud galactic civilizations that had ruled space for millennia were now fleeing in terror from an enemy they couldn't understand, let alone defeat. The Krex dreadnoughts that had survived were listing badly, their crews working frantically to repair damage from bioweapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. Luminary energy beings flickered weakly in their containment vessels, their reality-bending powers exhausted from futile attempts to harm creatures that existed partially outside normal space-time. Chancellor Nexus's flagship Dominion was among the most damaged. Hull breaches vented atmosphere, while emergency force fields struggled to contain cascading system failures. When the human refugee vessel UES Compassion approached offering assistance, the Chancellor was too desperate to maintain his usual condescension. Human vessel, he transmitted, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and defeat. We require immediate medical assistance and emergency repairs. Our casualties are extensive. Captain Elena Vasquez responded with the same cheerful helpfulness that had made humans seem so harmless for 50 years. Of course, Chancellor, we'll do everything we can to help. Bringing our medical teams aboard now. What beamed aboard the Dominion appeared to be human medical personnel equipped with basic life support equipment and rudimentary surgical tools. The aliens were too wounded and traumatized to notice that the primitive medical devices were performing miracles. Krex warriors with injuries that should have been fatal were stabilized within minutes. Luminari, whose energy patterns had been disrupted by bioweapon exposure, found themselves healing at impossible rates. How are your medical devices so effective? Asked Fleet Marshal Gorix weakly as a human medic sealed a wound that had been eating through his carapace like acid. Oh, we've had lots of practice patching people up, the medic replied with modest pride. Humans are pretty fragile, so we got good at emergency medicine. What Gorix didn't realize was that he'd just been treated with nanotechnology that made the galaxy's most advanced medical systems look like stone knives. The primitive human understanding of biology included manipulation of genetic structures at the quantum level, something no other species had achieved. Meanwhile, Admiral Chun was implementing Phase 2 from the Nemesis. All ships begin deployment of reality anchors. Dr. Hawkins, status on the quantum analysis. Complete, Admiral. I've identified 17 distinct vulnerabilities in Devour biotechnology. Transmitting tactical packages to all fleet commanders now. Across human space, the real military began to move. Ships that had been hidden for decades decloaked simultaneously, revealing a force that dwarfed even the combined galactic fleet. The human vessels looked unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Smooth, organic curves that somehow suggested both elegance and lethality. They moved with precision that spoke of technology beyond current understanding. On Haven, General Morrison watched his orbital defense grid power up to full capability. The agricultural satellites around the planet began to unfold like mechanical flowers, revealing weapon systems that could have cracked moons. But Morrison's attention was focused on the special cargo arriving from Earth. General, his aide reported, the Earthside shipment has arrived. Project Pandora is ready for deployment. Morrison smiled grimly. Project Pandora was humanity's answer to the Devourer's biological adaptation abilities. While the galaxy had spent millennia developing bigger and more powerful weapons, humans had taken a different approach. They had created weapons that evolved. The containers being loaded onto human ships didn't contain traditional munitions. They held what appeared to be metallic organisms, artificial life forms designed with one purpose: to out-evolve anything the Devourers could produce. Each Pandora unit was programmed with the accumulated military knowledge of human civilization, but they could learn, adapt, and improve in real time. At the Zirian Nebula, the Devourer fleet was consuming the remains of the galactic forces they had defeated. Their bioships grew visibly larger as they absorbed alien technology and incorporated it into their own structures. The massive command vessel had nearly doubled in size, its hull now bristling with weapons systems reverse-engineered from fallen galactic ships. The Devourer leader, a creature so ancient it remembered the galaxy's first wars, broadcast its triumph across all frequencies. Behold, lesser beings. Once again, we have proven that flesh transcends metal, that evolution conquers engineering. Your civilizations will feed our growth as countless others have before you. It was then that space around the Devourer fleet began to change. The first sign was subtle. Stars in the background began to flicker, their light bending in impossible directions. Then, space itself seemed to crystallize, forming geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. The Devourers found their movements becoming sluggish, their bioweapons responding slowly to mental commands. "What is this?" the ancient leader demanded, its voice now carrying undertones of uncertainty. From seemingly empty space, Admiral Chen's voice responded with cold professionalism. "This is a reality anchor field. You're about to learn that human engineering has some advantages over biological evolution." The human fleet decloaked in perfect formation around the Devourer forces. The sight should have been impossible. Hundreds of ships appearing simultaneously in positions that required navigation through dimensions the Devourers thought they controlled exclusively. The human vessels hung in space like predators that had been waiting for their prey to exhaust itself against inferior opponents. "Impossible," the Devourer leader hissed. "No species possesses such technology. We would have detected it during our reconnaissance." "You detected exactly what we wanted you to detect," Chen replied. "Welcome to human warfare. Elena, signal the galactic fleet. Time for the revelation." From her position among the refugee ships, Elena opened communications to Chancellor Nexus and the surviving alien commanders. Her voice carried none of the bumbling uncertainty they had grown accustomed to over 50 years. "Attention, galactic forces. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Space Navy. We're here to resolve your Devourer problem. Please maintain safe distance while we handle this situation." Chancellor Nexus stared at his communication display in shock. The voice was the same, but the tone was completely different. This wasn't the harmless, eager-to-please human they had known. This was the voice of a military professional addressing inferiors. What is happening?" he whispered. Elena's image appeared on his screen, and for the first time, he saw her as she really was. Gone was the slightly confused expression and bumbling mannerisms. Her eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who had been studying his species' weaknesses for decades. "What's happening, Chancellor, is that humanity is going to demonstrate why we've been the galaxy's most successful intelligence operation for 50 years. Watch and learn." The human fleet opened fire. But these weren't the primitive kinetic weapons the galaxy expected. Quantum resonance beams struck Devourer ships and didn't just damage them. They rewrote their fundamental molecular structure. Bioships that had been nearly indestructible found their own biology, turning against them as human weapons convinced their cells that they were foreign invaders. Temporal displacement bombs aged sections of Devourer vessels into cosmic dust while leaving the rest untouched, creating impossible geometric holes that defied three-dimensional physics. Gravity manipulation systems turned the creatures' own mass against them, creating localized black holes that consumed Devourer biomatter while leaving human ships completely unaffected. The ancient Devourer leader tried to adapt, pouring its incredible biological engineering into defensive countermeasures. It was like watching evolution in fast-forward as the creature's hull shifted and changed, developing new defensive systems in real time. It wasn't enough. "Deploy Pandora units," Admiral Chen commanded. The metallic organisms launched from human ships looked almost insignificant compared to the massive biovessels they approached. But when they made contact with Devourer hulls, something remarkable happened. The Pandora units began to evolve faster than biological systems could respond. They analyzed Devourer adaptations in microseconds and developed countermeasures before the biological systems could even complete their changes. "Impossible!" the ancient leader screamed as its carefully evolved bioarmor was systematically dismantled by artificial organisms that improved themselves with each interaction. "Evolution is the ultimate force. Biology is supreme." Dr. Hawkins's voice cut through the chaos with scientific precision. "Evolution is indeed powerful. But directed evolution guided by intelligence beats random mutation every time. And digital intelligence operates about 1,000,000 times faster than biological intelligence." The Devourer fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours before, began to collapse. Ships that had devoured the galaxy's greatest weapons found themselves helpless against human technology that operated on principles they had never encountered. Their bioweapons were neutralized by quantum fields. Their adaptation abilities were overwhelmed by artificial organisms that evolved in real time. Their dimensional manipulation was countered by reality anchors that locked them into normal space where human weapons could reach them. From the refugee ships, alien survivors watched in stunned silence as the nightmare that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was systematically demolished by the species they had considered comic relief. Chancellor Nexus found his voice first. How is this possible? Your ships were made of scrap metal and chemical explosives. Your weapons couldn't penetrate basic deflector screens." Elena's response carried the satisfaction of a plan 50 years in the making. "The ships you saw were made of scrap metal, Chancellor. The weapons you tested were chemical explosives. We showed you exactly what you expected to see. Humans are very good at meeting expectations. But the technology, where did you acquire such advanced capabilities? We made them ourselves. You see, while you were all laughing at our primitive engineering, we were studying every piece of technology in the galaxy. Krex gravitational manipulation, Luminary energy control, Zephyrian dimensional folding. We took the best features from every species and improved them. Turns out, when you're not limited by evolutionary preconceptions, engineering can advance very quickly. High luminary Etherias, her energy form flickering with what could only be described as shock, managed to transmit a coherent thought. But this level of deception, maintaining it for 50 years, why? Elena smiled, and for the first time in decades, it was completely genuine. Because the galaxy needed to underestimate us. You needed to think we were harmless pets, so you'd share your technology, your weaknesses, your military strategies. You needed to dismiss us so completely that you'd never see us coming. The last Devourer command ship was dying, its ancient intelligence finally, comprehending that it faced something unprecedented in its millions of years of conquest. What are you? It transmitted weakly. Admiral Chun answered with the pride of a species that had turned deception into an art form. We're humanity, and we've been preparing for this war since the day we learned you existed. As the Devourer fleet died in the light of human weapons, the galaxy began to understand that everything they thought they knew about the small species from the Outer Rim had been carefully orchestrated theater. The prey had become the hunters, and the hunters have been very patient indeed. In the aftermath of the Devourer fleet's destruction, space around the Zirian Nebula fell into an eerie silence. The bioships that had seemed invincible mere hours ago were now nothing more than drifting organic debris, their ancient intelligence extinguished by weapons the galaxy had never imagined. The massive command vessel, which had terrorized civilizations for millions of years, hung lifeless, a hollow shell being systematically dismantled by human salvage operations. Aboard the refugee ships, alien survivors struggled to process what they had witnessed. Chancellor Nexus sat in his damaged command chair, scales rippling with patterns that hadn't been seen in Krek's psychology for centuries. The markings of a predator discovering it had been prey all along. Fleet Marshal, he said quietly, run a complete analysis of human combat capabilities. I want to know exactly what we've been sharing dinner tables with for the past 50 years. Fleet Marshal Gorx's report painted a picture that defied everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Chancellor, preliminary scans suggest human technology is at least 3 orders of magnitude more advanced than our most optimistic projections. Their weapons systems operate on principles our physics departments claim are impossible. And sir, we're detecting massive installations throughout human space that we never knew existed. On the bridge of the UES Nemesis, Admiral Chun was coordinating what appeared to be a simple cleanup operation, but was actually the most sophisticated intelligence gathering exercise in galactic history. Every piece of Devourer biotechnology was being analyzed, cataloged, and reverse-engineered. What the galaxy saw as debris removal, humanity saw as the acquisition of millions of years' worth of biological weapons development. Dr. Hawkins, Chun called, "What's your assessment of the Devourer technology?" "Fascinating, Admiral. Their bioengineering capabilities are actually quite sophisticated, but they're limited by biological thinking patterns. They never developed beyond organic solutions to engineering problems. We can definitely use this." "Use it how?" Dr. Hawkins's smile was predatory. Every species in the galaxy just watched us destroy their greatest nightmare. They're going to want to know how. And they're going to be very interested in acquiring human protection. Elena Vasquez materialized on the Nemesis bridge via quantum teleportation, having completed her duties with the refugee fleet. Gone was any pretense of bumbling humanity. She moved with the precision of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of deception. "Admiral, the alien forces are requesting a formal debrief. They want to understand what just happened here." "I'm sure they do. What's their emotional state?" "Terror, confusion, and a growing realization that they've been played. Chancellor Nexus is particularly unsettled. He's beginning to understand the implications of what humanity has kept hidden." Chun nodded. Phase 3 was about to begin. The delicate process of revealing humanity's true position in the galaxy without triggering a panic that could destabilize interstellar civilization. The aliens needed to understand their new reality, but The transition had to be managed carefully. Signal the Galactic Fleet. Invite their senior commanders aboard for an educational briefing. An hour later, the command staff of what remained of the Galactic forces stood in the Nemesis conference room, trying to reconcile their surroundings with everything they thought they knew about human technology. The chamber itself was a work of art that defied several laws of physics. Walls that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, holographic displays that projected information directly into their minds, and a conference table carved from what appeared to be crystallized spacetime. Chancellor Nexus entered last, his massive form dwarfed by the implications of what surrounded him. Admiral Chun, he began formally, I believe my species owes yours a profound apology. We have underestimated your capabilities. No apology necessary, Chancellor. You reacted exactly as we hoped you would. Chun gestured for the aliens to take seats around the impossible table. Would you like to understand what really happened here today? High luminary etherias pulsed with patterns that indicated deep curiosity mixed with apprehension. Please, we must understand how our fundamental assumptions about galactic civilization were so completely wrong. Elena activated the room's central display, which materialized a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. But this wasn't the galaxy the aliens knew. This version showed the hidden reality of human expansion. Not the modest dozen systems they claimed to control, but a vast network that stretched across thousands of star systems, connected by dimensional corridors and quantum communication arrays. Ladies, gentlemen, and other entities, Elena began with professional courtesy, allow me to introduce you to the actual extent of human space. The alien commanders stared in stunned silence at the display. What they had taken for empty space, neutral zones, and uninhabited systems were revealed to be carefully disguised human territories. Mining operations that were actually military bases, research stations that were weapons development facilities, trade routes that were strategic corridors defended by hidden orbital fortresses. Crystal Singer harmony of his Zephyrians produced a sound like breaking glass. This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected such extensive development. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Dr. Hawkins replied, materializing holographic examples of human stealth technology. Observe. The display showed a human installation as it would appear to different species sensors. To Krex detection systems, it looked like an asteroid field. To Luminari energy sensors, it appeared as empty space. To Zephyrian dimensional analysis, it registered as a natural spatial distortion. Each species saw what their technological assumptions told them they should see. 50 years ago, Admiral Chun continued, humanity made a strategic decision. We could either announce ourselves as a major galactic power and face immediate opposition from established civilizations, or we could operate from the shadows, learning your capabilities while developing our own. Chancellor Nexus's voice carried undertones of what might have been admiration mixed with horror. You've been studying us. All of us. This entire time. Every species, every technology, every cultural weakness, Elena confirmed. The harmless human diplomats you've been patronizing for 5 decades? They were intelligence operatives gathering information on galactic military capabilities, political structures, and social dynamics. Every laugh at our expense, every condescending explanation of advanced technology, every assumption about human limitations, it all went into our strategic databases. Fleet Marshal Gorix made a sound like escaping steam. The implications, if you've been monitoring our military exercises, our technological development, our political deliberations, we know more about your civilizations than you do, Dr. Hawkins said matter-of-factly. We've had teams of xenobiologists studying your species' psychological patterns, sociologists analyzing your cultural blind spots, military strategists wargaming scenarios based on your tactical preferences. For 50 years, the galaxy's greatest intelligence operation has been conducted by species you thought were barely capable of space flight. The conference room fell into stunned silence as the alien commanders absorbed the magnitude of their miscalculation. Finally, High Luminary Etheria's managed to form a coherent thought. "Why?" she asked. "Why reveal this now? You could have maintained the deception indefinitely." Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. "Because the Devourers were only the beginning. Our long-range sensors have detected other threats emerging from dark space. The galaxy is entering a period of conflict that will require coordination between all intelligent species. But that coordination needs to be based on truth, not the comfortable lies we've all been telling ourselves." Elena manipulated the holographic display to show deep space beyond the galactic rim. What appeared were sensor readings of massive energy signatures, things moving in the darkness between galaxies that dwarfed even the Devourer fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena said quietly, "the Devourers were advanced scouts. The real invasion is still coming." The alien commanders exchanged looks of mounting horror. Chancellor Nexus was the first to find his voice. How many?" "Conservative estimates suggest approximately 10,000 fleets of similar size to what we just destroyed. They're moving through the dark matter networks, using the spaces between galaxies as highways. They'll arrive in approximately 2 years." The weight of this revelation settled on the galactic representatives like a crushing physical presence. Everything they had thought they understood about their situation had been wrong. They weren't dealing with an isolated incursion. They were facing a full-scale invasion by forces that could consume entire galactic clusters. Crystal Singer Harmony produced musical tones that translated as despair. "We cannot survive such an assault. Even combined, all galactic civilizations lack the resources to resist forces of that magnitude." "Actually," Admiral Chun said with a slight smile, "we can. But it's going to require a fundamental restructuring of how this galaxy approaches warfare and cooperation." "Meaning what exactly?" Chancellor Nexus demanded. Elena brought up new holographic displays showing technological specifications that made the alien commander's consciousness real. Weapons that could manipulate probability itself, making enemy attacks simply fail to occur. Defensive systems that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Ships that could duplicate themselves across multiple timelines, fighting the same battle in infinite variations until victory was achieved. "Meaning," Elena replied, "that humanity is prepared to share our actual military technology with our galactic allies. All of it. The weapons that destroyed the Devourers, the defensive systems protecting our hidden installations, the manufacturing capabilities that can build fleets in weeks rather than decades." "Why would you do that?" High Luminary Etheria's asked, her energy patterns flickering with confusion. "You've held the ultimate strategic advantage for 50 years. Why give it up now?" Admiral Chen stood, his bearing carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "Because, High Luminary, humanity didn't spend 50 years deceiving the galaxy just to rule it. We spent 50 years preparing to save it. The coming war will require every species, every world, every intelligence in the galaxy working together. But that cooperation can only happen if everyone understands the true scope of what we're facing. The time for comfortable delusions is over." Elena manipulated the display to show a new star map, one that depicted the galaxy as it would need to be organized to survive the approaching threat. Trade routes converted to supply lines. Neutral worlds transformed into fortress systems. Each species' unique capabilities integrated into a unified defense grid. "We're offering you a choice," she said simply. "Maintain your current technological levels and face extinction when the main invasion arrives, or accept human assistance and begin building a galactic civilization capable of surviving what's coming." The alien commanders stared at the proposed defensive network, trying to comprehend the scale of the transformation being offered. It wasn't just advanced technology, it was a complete reimagining of galactic civilization. Chancellor Nexus spoke slowly, his words carrying the weight of species-wide decisions. "What will be the cost of such assistance?" Admiral Chun smiled, and for the first time since the revelation began, his expression held genuine warmth. The cost, Chancellor, is that you'll have to stop underestimating humanity. We're prepared to turn this galaxy into something the universe has never seen, a civilization that doesn't just survive existential threats, but learns to thrive in spite of them. The question is, are you ready to find out what the galaxy can become when humans stop pretending to be harmless? 2 years later, the galaxy was transformed. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, humanity's newest and most ambitious construction project. The massive installation hung in space at the galactic center, a testament to what could be achieved when the galaxy's greatest civilizations worked together without the burden of mutual deception. What she saw through the transparent aluminum windows would have been inconceivable just 24 months ago. Krek's dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation alongside human stealth destroyers, their crews trained in combined tactics that utilized both species' strengths. Luminary energy beings had learned to interface directly with human quantum computers, creating hybrid intelligence systems that could process battlefield data at unprecedented speeds. Zephyrian dimensional technology had been integrated with human reality anchors to create defensive systems that existed in multiple universes simultaneously. Admiral, Captain Elena Vasquez approached, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Galactic Defense Coordinator, a position that hadn't existed until humanity revealed its true capabilities. Final status reports from all sectors. Elena had adapted to her new role with characteristic efficiency. No longer pretending to be a bumbling diplomat, she had become the interface between human strategic thinking and galactic military implementation. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. A woman who had spent decades hiding her intelligence, now coordinating the defense of an entire galaxy. Sector reports, Captain, all defense grids are online and fully operational. The Kreks have completed installation of gravitational mine fields throughout the outer rim approaches. Luminary reality warping stations are positioned at strategic dimensional intersections. Zephyrian fortress platforms are maintaining dimensional barriers across all probable invasion vectors. Chun nodded, reviewing holographic displays that showed the galaxy's new defensive posture. What had once been independent civilizations jealously guarding their territories was now an integrated network of mutual protection. The key had been transparency. Once every species understood humanity's actual capabilities, cooperation had become a matter of survival rather than diplomacy. And the human contributions? The quantum resonance grid is fully deployed across 12,000 star systems. Temporal displacement mines are seeded throughout dark space approaches. The Pandora manufacturing facilities on each member world are producing adaptive weapons at projected capacity. Elena paused, accessing data through the neural interface that connected her directly to the Galactic Defense Network. Admiral, we're also receiving reports from the deep space monitoring stations. The advanced scouts had detected the main invasion force. Chun had been expecting this moment for 2 years, but the reality still sent a chill through her. Display the data. The observation deck's holographic systems activated, creating a three-dimensional map of local galactic space. At the edge of the display, moving through the dark matter networks between galaxies, were energy signatures that defied easy comprehension. The invasion force was vast beyond anything previously imagined, not thousands of fleets, but millions, representing the accumulated might of countless devoured galaxies. Mother of Earth, Chun whispered, using an oath that had become common throughout human space. How long do we have? 6 standard days, Admiral. The Vanguard fleets will reach our outer detection grids first, followed by the main force approximately 12 hours later. Chun activated her command communications, connecting directly to the leadership of every major galactic civilization. All sector commanders, this is Admiral Chun. The invasion force has been detected. Commence finale défensive préparation. This is not a drill. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate and coordinated. What had once taken months of political negotiation now happened in minutes. Species that had been suspicious neighbors for millennia moved with unified purpose, their forces integrating into defensive patterns that would have been impossible without 2 years of joint training and shared technology. On the Krek's homeworld, Chancellor Nexus stood before a planetary defense grid that incorporated the best features of every galactic civilization. The massive gravitational cannons that protected his world were now enhanced with human quantum targeting systems, luminary energy amplification matrices, and Zephyrian dimensional focusing arrays. What had once been a planetary defense system was now a weapon capable of affecting entire solar systems. Fleet Marshal Gorix. The Chancellor rumbled, his scales displaying patterns of determined readiness rather than the fear that had marked their first encounter with the Devourers. Status of the combined fleet? All vessels are in position, Chancellor. The integration protocols have worked beyond our most optimistic projections. Human tactical coordination combined with our gravitational manipulation capabilities has created weapon systems that exceed the sum of their parts. Gorix paused, accessing data through his own neural interface, technology that hadn't existed in Krek space until humanity shared their innovations. Sir, we're receiving real-time tactical data from human deep space reconnaissance. The enemy formations are extensive. On the luminary homeworld of pure energy, high luminary theory is interfaced directly with the Galactic Defense Network. Her consciousness expanded across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The integration with human technology had allowed her species to transcend their previous limitations, existing in states of being that incorporated both energy manipulation and digital processing. Through her expanded awareness, she could perceive the approaching threat with clarity that would have been impossible 2 years ago. The invading forces weren't just ships. They were mobile ecosystems, entire civilizations converted into weapons of conquest. They carried the devoured remnants of thousands of species, their technologies absorbed and perverted into instruments of destruction. Admiral Chun, she transmitted through quantum channels, I'm detecting something unusual about the invasion force. They're not operating with unified command structures. It appears they've consumed so many different civilizations that they're experiencing coordination difficulties. Chin's response came through the network with tactical precision. Confirmed, high luminary. Human intelligence analysis suggests they're vulnerable to the same deception techniques we used against the galactic powers, but on a much larger scale. Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins materialized as a holographic projection in the Terra Station Command Center, her consciousness currently distributed across 17 different research facilities throughout human space. The integration of human and alien technologies had allowed humanity to transcend their own biological limitations, creating hybrid existence that incorporated the best features of digital and organic intelligence. Admiral, she reported, the Pandora adaptive weapons are ready for deployment. But we've made some modifications based on our analysis of the invasion force. What kind of modifications? We've programmed them to evolve not just tactically, but culturally. Each Pandora unit will be capable of mimicking the technological signatures of previously conquered civilizations. The invaders will see weapons and tactics from species they thought they'd completely absorbed. Elena smiled grimly as she processed the implications. Psychological warfare on a galactic scale. Make them fight ghosts of their own victories. Exactly. And there's more. We've been analyzing the coordination problems high luminary E-theory is detected. The invasion force is suffering from what we might call technological indigestion. They've absorbed so many different approaches to engineering that their systems are starting to conflict with each other. Admiral Chun felt the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. 50 years of studying galactic civilizations had taught humanity that the greatest weapon against any enemy was understanding their fundamental assumptions. The invaders assumed that absorbed technology would strengthen them. They were about to learn that complexity beyond a certain point became a weakness rather than a strength. Signal all defense coordinators, Chen commanded. Implement protocol chaos. Let's show these invaders what happens when humanity stops playing defense and starts getting creative. Across the galaxy, the defense network began to shift from passive resistance to active manipulation. Human-designed viruses infiltrated the invasion forces' communication networks, not to damage them, but to introduce subtle translation errors between absorbed species languages. Quantum resonance weapons targeted the fundamental frequencies that held the invaders' hybrid technologies together. Reality anchors were repositioned to create dimensional instabilities that would force the enemy to operate in normal space-time where galactic weapons could reach them. But the centerpiece of humanity's strategy was something no invading force had ever encountered before: weaponized empathy. Elena, Chen said quietly, activate the memory archive. Throughout human space, installations that appeared to be simple data storage facilities revealed their true purpose. They were vast repositories containing the cultural memories, artistic achievements, and philosophical insights of every civilization the invaders had consumed over millions of years. Humanity had spent 2 years reconstructing the histories of extinct species from scattered remnants and archaeological evidence. As the invasion force entered the galaxy's outer systems, they were suddenly confronted with transmissions from the civilizations they had devoured. Art, music, literature, and scientific achievements from species that had been extinct for millennia. The voices of the conquered, preserved and amplified by human technology, speaking across the void to remind their killers of what they had destroyed. The effect on the invasion force was devastating. Species that had been absorbed generations ago, but whose cultural patterns still existed within the hybrid fleet, began to reassert themselves. The careful integration that held the invasion together started to fracture as suppressed civilizations remembered who they had been before conquest. Admiral, Elena reported with barely contained excitement, we're detecting massive coordination failures throughout the enemy fleet. They're experiencing what appears to be civilizational dissociation. The absorbed species are rejecting integration with their conquerors. Chun watched the tactical displays with satisfaction as the seemingly invincible invasion force began to tear itself apart from within. Ships that had operated in perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly found their crew complements in open revolt. Technologies that had been seamlessly integrated started rejecting each other as the cultural patterns they were based on reasserted their independence. Signal the combined galactic fleet, Chun commanded. All units, commence offensive operations. Target ships showing signs of internal conflict first. Help the revolution along. The battle for the galaxy began with something unprecedented in military history: an invasion force defeating itself before the first shots were fired. The carefully orchestrated psychological warfare had turned the invaders' greatest strength, their accumulated conquest of countless civilizations, into their most critical vulnerability. But even in victory, Admiral Chen knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had survived its first true test of unified defense, but there would be others. The universe was vast, filled with threats and opportunities that required continued cooperation between species that had learned to respect rather than underestimate each other. As the invasion force collapsed into chaotic infighting and the galactic defense fleets moved to finish what human psychological warfare had started, Chen reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 50 years of careful deception, followed by 2 years of unprecedented cooperation, had forged something new in the galaxy, a civilization that was stronger than the sum of its parts. The galaxy had learned to laugh with humanity rather than at them, and that, Chun realized, had made all the difference. Elena, she said as reports of victory began flowing in from across the galaxy, signal Earth. Tell them the homeworld can stop hiding now. It's time for humanity to take its place as what it always was, the galaxy's guardian species. As Terra Station coordinated the final cleanup of the defeated invasion force, Admiral Chen looked out at a galaxy that would never again underestimate the small species from the outer rim. The age of deception was over. The age of humanity had begun. And the galaxy was laughing again, but this time they were all laughing together.